You are now listening to the Big Beyond Belief podcast with your host, Leo Costa Jr.
Hey everybody, this is Leo Costa from BigBeyondBelief.com. We got a great show for you today. I'd like to introduce to you David Miller. David, how are you?
I'm doing great, Leo. Thanks for having me on.
Beautiful. And David, I would, if you would please, because you'll do a better job than I, would you, for our audience, can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you're into?
Okay. Well, my background is I'm a graduate from the University of Southern California. I have a doctorate in biochemistry, but one of my passions is nutrition. And I've got patents in liposomal delivery of micro and macronutrients. It was actually the first time release of a whey protein or any kind of a protein for over 8 hours. We're able to put that together. We've worked with creatine as well and a few other things. My background, I was an athlete, played baseball through high school. I was a high school quarterback, college pitcher, went on to SC, played ball, and then got out and kind of went into science. My whole background has been in cardiology, interventional cardiology, and cardiovascular drug research. So it's kind of led me into everything, kind of fell into it, and active in martial arts for 45 years and fitness itself, and still to this day work out. And I'm a big fan of yours, Leo.
Well, here we are now, together again.
Yep.
So, David, I'm going to...
There it is.
Yeah, there you have it. So let me ask you this. I'm going to start out with this question here. Do supplements really work? Because, except for fish oil, most doctors, and I know, don't think so. What's your response to that?
Well, it depends on what you mean by do they really work? I mean, what is your goal? We know that, taking protein, at prior, and this is kind of a misnomer too, and I'm glad we're touching base on this, because, I think supplements work.
Okay.
It just depends on, it's like saying creatine. Creatine doesn't work? No, creatine is one of the most widely studied, along with whey protein, supplement in the world. And if you look at creatine, if it didn't work, then why have the last, 8 or 9 Olympic gold medalists in the sprints been on creatine?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
whey protein, we know, has bodybuilding, has muscle building effects. And the thing about it is you don't need to look like you did when you were massive or like a Schwarzenegger. You need lean muscle in order for your body to more readily function as the good Lord designed it to be.
Yeah.
So I think supplement works. Now, however, let me caution you this: there's a lot of crap out there. I mean, just so much crap out there that doesn't work. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to date myself here, Leo. You probably know this too, because we're about the same age. Remember taking the granulars and stuff from Universal, and you get this packet, a little round cardboard container with all these packets in it, and you take these granulars and all this other crap.
Yeah.
I don't know if that stuff works, but a lot of that stuff that we took back then, I mean, you saw the advertisements that they would have. I gained 36 pounds of lean muscle in 24 hours or some nonsense like that. So supplement industry does need to be regulated, but I don't think it needs to be regulated by a governing body, because I can't think of anything that the government's ever done that's ever turned out right, when it comes to regulations. So, but I think, professionals like yourself, myself, maybe there's a lot of other wise individuals out there that talk about supplements. And when you look back at the origin of supplements, I do believe they have a function in place. And we look at metrics. And I hate to, throw that out there, but metrics, when it was first designed by Conley, was, as an anesthesiologist, it was just something that he was working to help patients that were bedridden and that were losing their muscle, were atrophying. And, what he did is that concept where he had to mix the two containers together and so forth and so on. And metrics went on to be a hell of a product until Conley tried to sell the formula. I wanted to buy the formula because he didn't own the formula.
Yeah.
And they wanted $1 million for it. Conley said, hell no, I'm going to go ahead and redesign it myself because I'm a doctor, we could do anything.
Yeah.
Well, what he did is he screwed it up beyond belief, and he had to go back and pay $2 million for the formula because it was causing all kinds of gastric problems and stuff, the formula that he came up with. So I think that in a nutshell, Leo, I think supplements work.
Well, and the thing about that is, again, I think with doctors sometimes, on one respect, the comment that they make that they don't think, except for fish oil, that they work is because there's so much crap out there, but I think, that's not exactly what's going on. Again, based on what you're saying, that's what's really going on in the industry. Otherwise, as you said, why would they be using creatine in some of these sports? So let me...
Right. Well, look at nitric oxide. Let me just throw one other thing in there, Leo. You know what they call the guy that graduated last in medical school?
No.
doctor.
Okay, now
so
that makes sense.
Doctors are wise and intelligent in what they study. And I don't know too many of them to know, pardon my French, jack shit about supplements or nutrition. Because if you look at them, these are the guys that really need a nutritionist.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
Okay, so let me just throw that in, everybody, okay?
Yeah, okay. So let me ask you, David, for the audience, what is the difference? We're going to talk about whey protein now. What is the difference between whey isolate, whey protein, and milk and egg? Can you make that distinction for just kind of keep it in layman terms, because this is asked a lot of at my gym, and I try to break it down, but I want you to break it down for the audience.
Okay, let's start with whey. Curds and whey, it's separated. The whey is kind of the milky substance. Now, they call it sweet whey, and it's about 30 to 40% protein. Now, there's 3 different variations of whey. I mean, we touched that on that interview one time. You said, well, aren't there 2 types? No, there's 1 type of whey. It's the different variations as far as the purification process. Whey concentrates have about an 80 to 89%, I believe it is. It might be a little higher, might be a little lower. It depends on the manufacturer. That has the carbohydrates and the fats in it. Okay. Now, you purify that even further, and you get it up into the 90 percentile, and that becomes the isolates. And then there's another one that people don't really talk a whole lot about, the hydrolysates. Well, all the hydrolysates is our body breaks down everything that we take before it hits the gut. Okay. And so when you have peptides, the peptides that hold these amino acids together are the weakest link, because that's where our body, the hydrochloric acid and the gastric digestive enzymes and everything, break that apart and break it down into smaller peptides that our body could easily handle, which usually turns out to be free-form amino acids. Okay. So if you're not getting hydrolysates, means that it's been broken down, so it's not as long like an oligopeptide where it's multiple peptides put together and amino acids strung together, because our body will have to break it down. So what they do is they break it down into a smaller peptide so that our body can easily handle that. Okay. So which one is the best of that? Well, it depends on what you're after. Concentrates stay in your body a little bit longer. Okay. So they got quick release, but because of the milk fat and for the carbohydrates and stuff that's in it, it's slower released. Okay. Because whey protein in the isolate form is quickly released.
Okay.
And
so
that's good and that's bad, because sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, I wanted to ask you, with that being said right there, then which protein would you recommend for like a pre-workout for somebody who's training, whether it be for, maybe it's different, for endurance, for example, endurance training versus bodybuilding versus strength training. Would you use the same protein for all 3 of those, or what would be your recommendation?
You know what I would use? I would use the concentrates, because you get the immediate release, and that's what you're looking for protein synthesis. Now, that's whether you're fasted on your pre-workout meal and you go post. Because I've heard the window for absorption, and for uptake into the free amino acid pool to get in there as quickly as possible is 30 minutes. I've heard 45 minutes. I've heard an hour. I don't really think it matters to a certain degree. I think what matters is whether you take it pre or post. If you take it pre and it doesn't upset your stomach, and I always take it with water, because you've already got casein and some other milk fats in there. So it's going to release a little bit slower, but you'll get some immediate release, and it'll give you a longer. So if you're taking it as a pre-workout, you don't have to take it post. Okay, you follow what I'm saying?
No,
now, if you're fasted,
actually I don't. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just not getting it. I always thought you should take something as a pre-workout and then also a post-workout. But are you saying that that's not necessary?
Not necessary. We're finding out that that's not required. It comes down to whether you're fasted on your pre-workout. Now, if you take a pre-workout, it's going to hit, your whey protein will hit, and it'll be there at the end of your workout. And you're going to still get that protein synthesis and uptake into it. A lot of this stuff was spread by the protein companies. Okay. What they wanted to do is, hey, and I've had the pleasure a long time ago with a friend of mine, Keith Klein, out in Houston, Texas, and we put together a protein that was timed release for 8 hours in the human body, right? And we went out and talked with, I'm trying to remember their first names, but the brothers out there that started Muscle Magazine and all that kind of stuff.
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of them either.
I'm sorry, say again?
I can't think of their names either, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and they started with phosphorogen and all of that kind of stuff. When you start breaking it down, I take 4 of these a day. Well, hell, what they didn't tell you is that they're also taking anabolic steroids all day too. And so, when it comes to some of that stuff, the protein companies were pushing it because, of course, they want you to buy their products. So they're going to push that. And I understand that. But we have to break it down into what is scientifically true. And if you're taking a pre-workout and you can stomach that, and it's got your whey protein in it, there's really no need to take it afterwards, because it's still going to be saturated the receptors, and it's going to go into the free amino acid pool, which is available for uptake and synthesis to the muscles that are necessary, that are requiring it.
Interesting.
Okay?
Now, let me ask you this again to clarify, not only for myself but for the audience. When you say concentrates, is that another word for isolate, or is that the hydrolysis?
No, that's the lowest amount of whey protein, pure whey protein in it, because it has some carbohydrates and it has some milk fat and stuff. It's the least clean, so it's concentrated with everything else. So that's where the term concentrate comes from.
Okay.
Isolates is because you're isolating just the whey protein, so it's up in the 95, 96% pure. Yeah, there's still a little bit impurities, and then the hydrolysates, are probably the most expensive form. And the thing about the hydrolysates is they taste like licking the bottom of your shoe. So you have to get it into the 20 to 30% hydrolysates, not the 60 to 70%. And they're also very, very expensive.
Right. So within the whey protein, then, if I understand you, the less pure takes longer to break down than the isolate, and that takes longer to break down than the hydrolysis. Is that correct?
Pretty close, yeah. The less pure takes longer. The isolates, their uptake is much quicker and faster, and they don't last as long in the system. Okay. And the hydrolysates, it's just probably the cleanest form that you can get.
So I was under the impression, and I think a lot of bodybuilders were, is that the whey isolate gets into your bloodstream within 7 to 10 minutes. And that's why you'd want to take that before the workout, so it's there now. But you're saying that you can take the one that's less impure, and you're still going to get the benefit for the workout, as well as the post recovery. This really blows me away, because I heard completely differently as a bodybuilder.
I also subscribe to that theory for the longest time too. Yeah. And the more we study things, the more we find out is that with the greater the purification, the better the product. The better the uptake. It kind of changes our science, becomes a little clearer. And because I was the same way, I always took carbohydrates before the workout, thinking, okay, I'm going to fuel myself through there. And I started taking the creatine. I saw gains on creatine. It was like, okay, this stuff works pretty good. Then I would take within an hour. And these were professional fighters that I would work with on breaking down their weights and getting them ready for a fight. One of them was James Toney, a Hall of Famer, and I had to take almost 50 pounds off him, but I had 5 months to do it. And we were able to get him down I went to Russia with him, and we were able to get him down to the catch weight of 198 pounds. You could actually see James shrink, and that consisted of, 3 protein drinks. And a lot of the fighters don't understand creatine. They're afraid of it, and you ask them why, and they can't tell you why. They just heard it's bad. Yeah. And so, sometimes it's better if you're trying to drop weight, maybe it's best not to even put them on the creatine, but I did put them on the glutamine for recovery. Yeah. And I sincerely believe in that. So I think now the best thing to do, this is just my opinion based off the science that I know, is I go with the concentrates, a little bit cheaper, but yet it has the immediate release like you're looking for, but it has a slower sustained release that lasts over a couple hours. Then again, it depends on also your metabolic rate, because that has an effect on it. When we put that whey protein in a liposome is a little phospholipid shell that we use out of phosphatidylcholine, and why phosphatidylcholine? Well, there's phosphatidylcholine, serine, and phosphatidylphenethylamine. And the thing about it is it protects it. So it goes through, because the pH on that cell, on the liposome, is the same as the gastric acids, so it doesn't break it down. So as it hits the gut, it's absorbed through the gut, because there's a small amount of carbohydrate in that shell, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's taken up, and then because secondary hydrolysis takes place in the liver. Okay, ours passes through the liver, because it's seen as not a foreign invader, so you don't get the phagocytosis or the cystocytosis or the immune response. Okay, it's seen more as a red blood cell, and it passes through. Okay, and then it's taken up into the free amino acid pool, and it's available. The thing about it is, you could take, let's say, anywhere between 20 and 40 grams would you recommend to bodybuilders that they want to take. Now, I know we've talked about this before. I believe, unlike a lot of the dietitians, I think that we, as people who work out, people that put their body under stress, and they do want to add muscle, that they need to take more than what they recommend. recommendation is, so like I said before, I'm kind of a Peter Lemon guy myself and advocate. And, I'm at the 2.0, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah.
That's a lot, but it was not really when you break it down throughout the day. That's just not just whey protein. That's your protein in your meals and your whole 9 yards. So that's an abundance of protein broken down into like 5 or 6 meals.
Yeah. So besides protein, what else would you recommend or should be in a pre-workout drink, and why?
Well, a good source of carbohydrate, clean source of carbohydrates, whether, you're grabbing an apple or, some sort of potatoes or something along that way, or, a creatine. What I did on my pre-workout drinks is unlike regular creatine, when we put it into the liposome, we had a completely different effect because it gave you because the phosphatidylcholine also being used for a cell, every cell in your body has phosphatidylcholine in it. Back in the day when the Japanese were making the drinks for mental acuity, one of the things that they would use was phosphatidylcholine. And it gives you that kind of oomph, that push. And so I would take the creatine and the glutamine and mix them together, and I would drink that. And I would lie to myself sometimes because, you get home at 10 o'clock at night. I was like, damn, I'm going to the gym. I really don't want to do 45 minutes of cardio tonight. I just don't feel up to it. But by the time I mixed those 2 drinks and got halfway through my weights, it was like, hell yeah, I'm going to do cardio.
Yeah.
And it just kind of gave you that mental acuity, that spike to go after things and to get it done. And I had fighters and, athletes of all kinds tell me, man, I can feel that.
Yeah.
And how many times, Leo, have you ever taken a supplement and felt it in your body?
Oh, man. And it makes a difference. I mean, it starts in the head,
Yeah. Thank you. You're absolutely right. And so I would do something. I would take a creatine or even a nitric oxide. And the reason why I like mixing the 2 together, because from a medical standpoint, from a cardiology standpoint, if you're taking creatine, and people don't realize, creatine, you got a lot of receptors in your heart because it's a muscle and it contracts, okay? So it increases the contractility of the left ventricle, which is very important in life. And then you add the nitric oxide, which is a good vasodilator. So you're increasing the width of the vessels in your heart, and you're increasing the contractility, which means you're forcing more blood down there. And that's why you get such a much better pump, because your cardiac output, you're stimulating cardiac output. And that's something that we're looking at right now for diabetics. Because when you shoot a diabetic's coronary arteries, you can tell within the first shot when you do a heart catheterization. I mean, you can tell within the first image that you take whether they're diabetic or not, because they become very, very, the vessels start to shrink up. Okay, they start to retract, and they become very, very hectic in the turbulence flow through it. So what happens is because they're contracting, you start losing, any kind of proliferation that's going to go down to the toes, to the extremities. And what's the body do? It protects itself by protecting organs. So you're going to get less blood flow and diffusion down into your distal extremities. So that's why they start chopping you off piece by piece.
Wow.
When you're a diabetic. So kind of threw that in there. But that's what I would take. Or worst comes to worst, I'd grab an apple or something just to get some sort of carbohydrates in me. There's a little bit of sugars in there and stuff. But I never like to work out on an empty stomach.
Yeah. So with that being said, with the protein, would it make a difference, for example, because I know that from my own experiences that adding fat to a meal, like a butter to baked potato, slows the release of the sugar. So if you put, for example, in this pre-workout whey isolate or whey protein, if you put in something that had high fat in it, would that diminish the results or the effectiveness of the pre-workout drink if you added fats?
It depends on the fats that you add, obviously. The thing that I have not found out there, Leo, maybe this is something we could put our collaborative brains together, is to come up with a outstanding pre-workout drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're going to add some fat to it, you might string it out a little bit longer for absorption and, it stays in your system longer. Yeah. But what we did with the liposomes, we found that we only went 6 hours. And we noticed we did blood draws every hour. We did, we washed in, washed out, but we did a pre and we took a baseline. At the end of 6 hours, it was going back up because it was still above baseline. It never went below baseline or even close to baseline. It stayed up. And then we noticed it trending up. So we washed out and then came back a couple of weeks later with the same subjects so we could maintain it. And we were able to see that it was still at 8 hours, it was still at peak. It was just starting to come down. So we don't know if it would have been 10 hours, but we knew for exactly 8 hours.
Amazing.
Now, is there a benefit for having a protein in your body that long?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we knew that, like milk and egg protein, for example, which is one of my questions down the road. It was always thought that because it takes longer for that to break down, you'd take that milk and egg protein before you go to bed at night. So it would stay in your system to help repair, blah, blah, blah. And
nocturnal drinks are the best. See, people, and you touched on that. You just hit it. You take it nocturnally because where do you make your greatest gains?
Yeah, sleeping.
Yeah, sleeping.
Yeah.
That's where you make your gains. And I used to always try to tell these athletes, I put them on like some cottage cheese or some yogurt and a half a bagel with butter. Eat it. Oh, but if I eat it, probably no. The body doesn't work that way. Okay, yeah. I don't know what you know about the body, but forget it. Okay, that's why you hired me. I won't tell you how to fight. You don't tell me how to put stuff in your system. We'll get along just fine. And I'll tell you what, and not to be arrogant, but I have never had a fighter miss weight. Never. Yeah, and when I watch the UFC and these guys are 5 pounds, 7 pounds, how in the hell do you get 7 pounds overweight?
Exactly.
And miss your weight? Part of the problem is these guys are walking around. They fight at 185, but they walk around at 220. Yeah. Perfect example of that was Rampage Jackson. Great guy. I love this guy to death. He is not the guy that you see on TV. He's a completely different human being altogether. And I love the dude to death. And the thing is he's walking around at 220. But he fights at 185. Yeah. And it's like, don't you understand what you're doing to your body? Yeah. Your thyroid and everything else. You're killing yourself. Fight at a heavier weight or don't walk around more than 10 pounds over your fighting weight. If you're a true professional, this is what you do. You should not be walking around at 220 if you fight at 185.
Yeah. And something you're making me flash back to a time when, back in the 80s, it was like bulk up as much as you can. And then drop weight for an event. Well, hell, I remember losing 50 pounds before an event, and shit, I came in the worst shape of my life. And part of the reason is exactly what you're saying. But sometimes you got to learn some hard lessons because after that, no, it's true. But after that, it was just like what you're saying. It was 10, no more than 15 pounds overweight. So that's very similar to what you're saying. Another question I had, David, and again, you mentioned that there's a long window after the workout in the way protein stays in your body, but we were always told that there's a window of opportunity. In other words, like when you're going to do a post-workout drink, to make sure that you got it in right away, because after about 45 minutes, that window closes, and when that happens, then you're not going to get the benefit of that protein as an agent. Maximum benefit
for protein synthesis. Let me tell you something. There's only one paper out there that I've been able to find. Now it's been a few years, so I preface it with that it was a pre-workout versus post-workout. It's the total amount of protein that you get into your body per day is the important thing. If your goal is 400 grams, it's important that you get 400 grams. But also, that window, that we're finding that window is not true because it's also based off of protein synthesis will take place throughout the day, but also protein synthesis will take place in your pre-workout. So by the time you're done with your workout, you're at, I've heard 30, I've heard 45, I've heard an hour, that you wanted to. And I subscribe to that too. And so I read this paper and it really got me thinking like, wow, wait a minute. That only makes sense. Because it's about the total amount that you want to put into your body. Yeah. And now, Leo, and I toss it back at you. I always told the fighters, we're going to put you on a eating program. I don't believe in diet. I think diet's a 4-letter word. I think it has nothing but negative connotations, and it sets you up for failure. That's just my opinion based off of my history with doing the research on it. However, what I think is important is that you create caloric confusion in your body. You don't eat 2,000 calories on the dot or thereabouts every day. Because just like using weights, if you're doing a 25-pound curl and that's all you do for your bicep is quickly going to be able to handle that weight with no problem, no resistance. So that no longer becomes progressive resistance, so it's not going to happen. I think the same way with calories, because if you take in 2,000 calories a day, okay, that's not really a smart thing to do if you're very active. And that's where that yo-yo diet syndrome kind of tails into all of this and kind of fits into it. But if you're taking 2,000 calories in, if you say you make a mistake and you only take in 1,700 calories or 1,800 calories or 1,900 calories, your body's going to withhold that because it's not getting the total amount that it's used to taking, so it's going to store. Okay, if you take in too many, the body's going to store because it's not used to breaking that down. Yeah. So I believe in caloric confusion in your body, because then you keep that body going, wow. Yeah. And I think that works best. That's just my opinion based off the science that I have and the information that I have.
Well, let me back that up with something, because one of the things I did when I was competing, and this is when I was working with Mauro Di Pasquale, is during the week I would do like
Smart man.
Yep, he is, man. He is the man. It was like a stair-step effect. So like Monday would be the certain amount of calories, and I'd ramp up to Wednesday, which was my peak for the week, and then I'd start decreasing my caloric intake. So Monday and Friday, the calories were the same. Tuesday and Thursday, they were the same, and Wednesday were the highest. And then on the weekend, I would kick my calories up to like 10,000. I was eating on the average during the week like around 2,500 to 3,500 per day. And then on the weekend, I would eat 20,000 calories over the weekend. And that's exactly plays into what you're saying, because that kind of temporary stress on the body. You got growth hormone release. There's a lot of good things that happen with that. Very effective. So
that happens, exactly.
It's exactly.
Let me tell you something. I started working with the SEAL teams when I was living in Coronado with 1, 3, and 5. And these are guys, especially when they're going through buds and stuff, they're eating 20,000 Ks a day, especially when they're going through Hell Week and everything else. I mean, the only thing they have is food. And a lot of times that is almost a thermogenic effect on them. You know, you want to get as much hot sauce, and pepper, and casein, and all that stuff in there as you can, because of the thermogenic effect of heating your body up. But unbeknownst to them, they were also burning Ks a lot faster.
Yep.
So these were the things that you could always tell when Hell Week was happening, because there'd be a line of puke to the chow hall and a line of puke going back. You know,
exactly.
And the thing is these guys, once they got out of that, they had to start figuring out how to eat. And when you're out in the middle of the desert and all you got is K-rats, what are you going to eat? You know, It's not like the most nutritious thing you could get and stuff like that. So we started trying to teach them how to eat and the difference, you know, and getting those calories in, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere and, you know, you got very little to eat, you better eat a lot of that very little.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
never know. Exactly. So interesting stuff, David. Another question for you. How long before your training should you take a pre-workout drink? Would you recommend?
Well, once again, it depends on what you're taking. Okay. I would recommend about 45 minutes, anywhere from 45 minutes to, you know, if you're using whey protein, you know, 30 minutes, because you're going to get that immediate release. You can even drink your pre-workout meal on your way to the gym, you know, if it's in a liquid form. Okay. Yeah. But going back to that, remember, Leo, you're one of the cerebral bodybuilders, okay? Because you knew that it's better to eat your meal than it is to drink your meal. It's better to drink your meal than it is to miss a meal. It's better to have a bad meal than it is to miss a meal. Okay?
Yeah, good.
And so that being taken, if you're, let's say you're taking a whey protein drink mixed with creatine and eating an apple, it was one of the things that I did. And I always did that on my way to the gym.
Yeah, interesting.
So half hour, you know, 30 minutes. It depends on how far you got to drive or what it is. Also, how does your body react to that? How are you able to take that and then power through your things? Because, you know, there's been times when, you know, you take your pre-workout meal, then you go hit legs. God, I used to hate that.
Yeah. And
then you got this thing sitting on your gut, and, you know, you're just about puking anyway. If you're not just about puking when you do legs, then obviously you're not doing them right. I heard that from somebody. Might have been a real smart guy that I followed one time, like you, you know, and stuff like that. Because if you're not, then you're not working it. Okay. And then you got this heavy meal sitting on you. So I always thought it was best to drink it. Yeah. So a half hour. If I'm doing legs, half hour easily. If I'm not doing legs, you know, I'll sip it on my way there and stuff and eat my apple.
Yeah. That's funny. Funny stories. You know, by the way, I learned that shit from Platts, you know, and you know who Platts is. Yeah. So it's not all my fault.
Man, did that guy have legs.
Oh my
that
God.
Guy, I think, he had legs like there's never been on this planet. That's my opinion.
Well,
I mean, the guy was incredible.
I don't think those were really legs, but whatever. That's another story. Anyway, David, let me ask you this. When it comes to milk and egg protein, I've always talked about using, because of the fact that, again, and what I'm learning from you is always fascinating, because you turn the the traditional information upside down, and it makes total sense, which I love, because I love to keep on learning. But one of the things I've used milk and egg protein for sometimes is more like a meal replacement instead of like an agent for pre or post recovery. Again, I'm giving you my old school thinking, but
sure.
Is that still a valid excuse for using milk and egg? In other words, saying, look, if you're having trouble eating, just take a milk and egg protein.
You know what else I use? I use that, but I also use chocolate milk, low-fat chocolate milk. Man, that's like the poor man's protein drink.
Okay.
You get in there, it's low-fat, it's low in sugars and everything, and, you're getting the casein in you, the milk and egg. I think egg proteins is fabulous. I mean, I eat a lot of egg whites. I still do to this day, and, egg whites are so easily done, and I never mixed, in the old days, I used to mix my protein with milk, but I found, for me, and from what I was able to ascertain through science, is that sometimes that's not a good thing to do, okay? Because of the fact that the casein will beat it to the protein receptor sites faster than the whey will. So you're saturating that, and what happens to the whey? I mean, how much whey is actually absorbed in 40 grams into the body? Because we don't know. But we're estimating about 70% of it is fired out through the poop chute and through the urine and through respiration.
No kidding.
Because
that much.
I'm sorry?
I said, no kidding, that much.
Yes. Well, because especially if you got milk. And so some of the things that we have learned is to go back and use the ice and, the cold water, blend it in, throw some, almonds in it, or use some almond milk, which is okay too. And do those kind of mixtures. But what has happened in our industry is to think back for a little bit. What used to be very good protein bars tasted like licking the bottom of your shoe, but they were healthy.
Yeah.
But they were healthy. Now they're like cake and ice cream and cookies and everything else, and they taste great, but they're worthless.
Yeah,
And so,
it's so funny. You're making me laugh because, like in the weightlifting industry, and Platt said this. He said, now this equipment, the way they make equipment now, because they make it to be more commercialized, it's useless.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the old days when they had the right angles, that's when the equipment was, something, and that's when it really worked. Now it's just, and you're saying the same damn thing in the industry.
The industry is about $1. There are some good companies out there, and they mean well. But go on YouTube and you watch all these guys talk about whey protein and how to mix it and best times to use it and stuff. And you look at him, and I'm not going to take advice from a guy that's got arms like spaghetti.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a massive guy knows what he's talking about, because we've all talked to some of those bodybuilders that couldn't spell cat if you gave them a C and a T.
Yeah.
But man, are they smart when it comes to anabolic steroids?
Yes,
sure. Man, they just put you to shame. There's not a whole lot of guys out there that were like you, that were cerebral in what they did and their approach. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's what I have seen.
And I think think that's the norm. Yeah, I think you're nailing it. That's exactly right.
Well, let me ask you a question here. How many guys do you really think the human body can get that big in Mr. Olympia without using some sort of performance enhancing?
Never.
Yeah, I don't think God meant it to be that big.
End of story.
But I tell you what, there are some massive guys out there that have never. Look at Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, but that guy, all he did was push-ups.
Yeah.
But he had incredible genetics. I mean, we weren't blessed with that kind of genetics.
Yeah.
With his athleticism and everything that he did. We had, I don't know about you, but the biggest I ever got, I was bench pressing over 500 pounds, 503 pounds free bar, and I had a 51-inch chest, 20-inch arms, and a 32-inch waist. But it was my God. Everything, it was I almost got divorced because I had to eat at a certain time. I had to be at the gym. I had to do it. And of course, it was over a period of time that I was trying to prove something. But my wife said, I'd rather have you a little bit of chunky and a little bit of fat on your ass and have you around than to be in the gym all the time, because you look good, but we never see you.
Yeah. I think it's one of the hazards in the industry for sure, especially in the sport. You see it all the time. David, let me ask you another question, if I may. What is the difference again, for our audience, what is the difference between BCAAs and full spectrum amino acids, and how should they be used?
Well, branched chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those those are the ones. Leucine, everybody says, has a tremendous role in muscle building, and and I agree. I think it does. But branched chains, I would go with a whole full spectrum, because if you got a true whey protein and it contains the 20 amino acids, you're getting the branched chains. Back in the day, we didn't have, we didn't have whey protein. I mean, think back when whey protein first kind of hit the market about 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
There was soy and there was the plant, and you were getting that crap. It was called protein powder. It didn't say whey protein powder; it just said protein powder,
right?
And stuff. So as the evolution of the industry and as whey protein came about, because like back in the old days, they used to throw whey away. They would take it, shovel it, and the farmers couldn't get rid of the shit until they found out, the biological value and the benefits that it had and stuff. So you had a lot of guys prior to that using soy, which is not recommended for men, unless, of course, you're a cancer patient, because you want to cut down your testosterone. But the whole thing is branched chain amino acids, I think, are good. But if you're taking a good protein, you're going to get your branched chain amino acids in it. Maybe not as high as those individuals. If you wanted to supplement on that, yeah, fine. But once again, how much of that will be absorbed?
Exactly. I think it's just so fascinating because, it almost makes me think, and I don't necessarily blame the industry, is they're looking for every little way to make money. You get money out of the consumer, and it's kind of like the way the proteins and the way you're breaking it down. I mean, yeah, maybe you do need a pre and post, but no, not really, based on science, which I kind of think that the BCAAs is kind of the same example that you're using, which I think is fascinating. I think it's really good information. So,
what we can do, maybe at another date, we can go over the creatine or some of these things. I'm putting some stuff together, Leo, that you might be interested in. I'll fire it off to you. I just get sick and tired of seeing this shit on pardon my French, seeing this crap on TV and stuff, or the YouTubes about how this works and how that works. And it's not true. Yeah. It's just not. And they're being, how do they say politically? They're being disingenuous. I call them, effing liars. Yeah. But, there's a difference between being a liar and being stupid,
No, I agree. It's one of the reasons why I'm now doing the podcasting is getting back into the industry, because I started thinking, how am I relevant in the industry? And for me, it was about exposing the truth, really, because there's so much, as you said, disingenuous information that's out there. So we're on the same page that way. Another question.
Oh, hell yeah. That's why I love talking to you. I love talking to Joe Breen, and what a good guy he is. And you got a good man there in Joe. And we had talked about, after, I get everything taken care of here, he wants to train. Hell, I want you to train me too, because I'm 62. I want to compete one time at 65 years old.
Nice. That's a good goal.
One time.
A lot of, and it's happening a lot more. When I came back for my last, I was 56 when I started competing, and I was amazed at how many older athletes that there are now compared to when I first started. I mean, there's a lot of people that are competing in the 50 and over, and there were even people at 70, believe it or not. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
I believe it, because science has gotten better. Yeah. Training's gotten better. Think of the stupid ass exercises you would see people do back then that are still doing now that have no benefit, only detriments.
Right.
And see, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go to the best person I know how. And obviously that would be you. Come to you. Joe and I, we could push each other. I told him he could room with me. That way we could keep our meals on track.
Yeah.
And make sure that we're accountable to each other. Because when you're accountable to somebody, and there's also that little bit of competition.
Yep.
Because you don't want that guy to beat you. Yeah. And you don't want him to have better results because you were lazy.
Exactly.
Now, if he gets better results because he worked his ass off, man, I support him 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't want him to have better results because I'm lazy. No, that ain't going to happen.
Hey, listen, that's the reason why when we were, especially pre-workout or pre-contesting, I always had 3 or 4 people that were my spotters or, my workout partners because of the reason that you're saying. By the way, thank you for making that comment about a compliment to me. I really appreciate that. David, I'd be happy.
It's true. It's true, man. I'm not blowing smoke. It's true.
I'd be happy to train you guys. But anyway, David, let me ask you this. The vasodilators, okay, so in layman terms, what supplements are vasodilators and what the hell do they do for the audience?
Okay. Well, a vasodilator is anything that dilates a vessel, okay? Whether it's when you think of the heart, left ventricular contraction, well, there's two sides, the left and right side. Old blood goes through the lungs, comes out, goes through the valve and in to the left ventricle squeezes it out, and it shoots it down through the body, okay? It shoots it out. Arteries take blood away, veins return blood. There's in a vein, there's valves. There's no valves in arteries. Because if there was valves, there's no veins in the veins. If there was no valves, when you stood up, all your blood would pool to your feet. So what happens is it squeezes those, the pressure squeezes it up back into the right side of your heart, which is a low pressure system, okay? So now a vasodilator will dilate those. Blood pressure medications can dilate them. And something like nitric oxide has been found to actually dilate those vessels. Why is that important? Well, because if the vessel is large, think of a hose, and you turn it on a little slowly, and it is dribbling out. You turn on full blast, boom, you get all that pressure, builds up behind it and shoots that out. Well, that's kind of like what happens when you dilate a vessel. You're getting more blood flow, which causes the left side of the heart or even the heart itself to speed up a little bit to meet that demand. Because if you got a hose and you're used to sending it out 3/4 full, now all of a sudden you're sending it out completely full, try to visualize that. Your heart has to compensate and work faster in order to get that out. So your heart rate may go up, and that's a good thing because now your vessel is dilated. So what happens? You're getting, like creatine, you're going to get more infused, engorged muscles, which obviously you're getting more nutrients in, which obviously helps to increase in protein synthesis along with muscle development.
Beautiful.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. Very well said. One of the things that brings to mind about nitric oxide, one of the things that was being done and probably still is in the sport, it was that in between steroid cycles, what bodybuilders would do, it would be to take Viagra, Cialis, any of those, because it's mainly nitric oxide. And it was a really good way to, we used to call that sort of connecting, while bodybuilders were down on their cycle, to bridge over until the next cycle started. They used the Cialis and Viagra for that, which is nitric oxide. So no, I've used the nitric oxide, and I think you're exactly right. I can, when you're in tune with your body, you can feel this stuff actually working.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Obviously, you being intelligent, you want to cycle through everything, and a lot of guys, just the fact that you're intelligent, it means that you're alive because you did it right. Look at all these bodybuilders that are dead at 38, 35, 40 years old. Yep. Because they with anabolic steroids, a lot of people say it's a psychological as well as physiological. I think it's more psychological than it is physiological, due to the fact that a little is good as a lot is better. This is a sport about getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So people sometimes don't realize what they're doing to their body. If you're willing to pay the price to have a body like that, you must be willing to pay the devil on the backside.
Yeah. That is true. I mean, there's always trade-offs. I mean, it's not just in the sport; it's kind of in life. If you think about that. But and again, one of the reasons I think that guys like me are still around is because I was lucky enough to meet Tom Platz. I mean, the guy was so good for the sport in so many ways, but he was like this, evil genius. I mean, he thought through everything almost to the point of absurdity. I have to tell you, but I really appreciate that now. I mean, even like when we went out to dinner, a little quick story, there was hardly ever a time that Tom Platz, when he got a steak that was brought to him, it was ever done right. It was like he had to have it he would tell the waiter, okay, I want you to have, take this back and have them cook this another 2.5 minutes because then it'll be perfect. But Tom was just like that in every aspect. But he gave me some really strong and really good advice when it came to cycling everything. I mean, that included supplements, that included the whey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was a smart, and the guys that were on his level, they got it. But so many of them, just like you're saying, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So many guys have either burnt out or, I mean, I saw Coleman the other day on a video, and the guy looks, I mean, he's torn up, from the stuff that he, especially his training. Yeah, and he's all beat up and everything. Yeah,
I was doing some work on it. It's called the Rock Institute. It's was originated by a USC alumnus of mine, Vic Rakshani, and they used to call it, they would call him the V-back, and they still use that term today. Well, Vic went on to play for the Rams and for a USFL team, was injured, had a neck injury, and had to retire. So he started the Rock Institute, which was a spiritual but also a healing place. Now, when they asked me to come down there and help out and see if I'd be interested, with my knee being the way it was, 5 knee operations, I didn't have full extension or flexion, and it was always painful. I went down there, and a pitcher for the Angels back then was Mark Langston, and he was there, and they were recording everything. And Vic did a release down my leg. Now, massage to me were the things that you paid when you went in to get a happy ending. I did not believe in therapeutic massage. Okay, I could feel the heat in my knee from the blood flow, and there was no pain. When he got done, it took about 45 minutes. When it got done, I felt incredible. Yeah. I could walk normal. I didn't limp. I didn't have a little bit of a gait. It didn't hurt. I didn't have to kind of turn my legs sideways when I went upstairs. After my first back operation, I was there, and Vic goes, "Hey, you're hurting, Doc. Get on the table." I said, "No, get on the table." So I get on the table. I could actually feel him rubbing out the pain, the pain leaving my body.
Yeah.
It made me understand right there, I'm not that smart after all. So I have to go back, and things that I had biases on, I had to go back and check. And there were some things that I was absolutely 100% incorrect on, and things that I believed that I thought were true in fact. Because sometimes you take these things as gospel, and then you find out, well, which gospel was this coming from?
Exactly.
And stuff. But I just found that this industry is expanding. There's so much to it, so much that we don't know, so much that we're going towards. The old saying, you know what you know what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. Well, that don't know what you don't know should be getting smaller on things that you don't know, and things that you do know should be getting larger and stuff. And so in my quest, I'm like you, I want to, till the day I die, I want to be learning something. I want to look in the mirror and say, today I'm a little bit better than I was yesterday, and here's the reason why. It doesn't have to be this great, metaphysical thing, that transformation. No, it just has to be something that I didn't know yesterday that I know today. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Let me say this, David. The reason that I have you on this show, and that we've done this before, is because of exactly what you're saying. I'm very, I'm inspired and attracted to people like you in the industry because it's really needed, and there's nothing better than to continue to learn. That keeps me going. It keeps me all fired up about going forward. So I want to wrap this thing up today, and I want to say that I really do thank you for taking time out to do this. It means a lot. And the best of luck with you. And maybe down the road, who knows, we'll be in the same gym together. You, Joe, and me.
Oh, hell yeah, buddy. You can count on that. And look, anytime, any place for you, I have no problems. Like I said, not only am I a fan of yours, I'm admired and enthralled by how intelligent your questions were today. I mean, but then again, that's just you, Leo. That's just the way you are. So
thanks again.
I enjoyed myself as always, brother.
Okay, man. You take care.
All right. Keep in touch, pal.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.